Ty wanted to touch on the Lions and Packers game. So I'm going to kind of give that to you. I know you want to touch on Jared Goff. You kind of take the range with the talk about what you saw, what you think you'd like to see more from each of the teams. Just go ahead, lay it out on me. Talk Jared Goff, then we'll go off that.
Lions win that game 24-14. Didn't really feel like 24-14. They Packers did add on 8 late there in the fourth quarter. So, without the late 8, it could have been 24-6 final. So it kind of felt like the Lions were in control the entire ball game. It's time to start talking about Lions. I know it's new for some NFL fans, but the Lions are serious, like Super Bowl contenders, and I know a lot of our viewers know that. And you know, and I know a lot of the NFL world knows that. But seriously, it's new and it's weird, but it's great. It's great for Detroit. That's a fan base that has been through a lot, and they deserve a winner. So it's good for them. Probably the best team in the NFC, just to be honest. They've shown the most consistency. That division itself, the NFC North, is extremely talented, I believe. I could definitely see, at least 3 of those teams in that division getting in. But the Lions are the best in that division. I think they're the best in the NFC. Jared Goff has just gone absolutely wild this year. The completion percentage is out of this world. I believe he leads the league in completion percentage. He's throwing a lot of touchdowns, obviously. He's just been really good. I think a lot of NFL fans, too, kind of have thought, hey, Jared Goff, he's always going to be around the middle of the pack kind of guy. If you rank him with all the starting quarterbacks, he's going to be around, I say middle of the pack, but a little bit out in front. So he's always going to be around the 10 or 11 or 12 spot. He's not always going to be an elite guy, but I mean, he seriously has looked elite this year. The way he's been slinging the ball around the yard, he has been really, really big for them. Dan Campbell, enough about him, a former Saint coach. He played in Detroit in one of his stops when he was in the league. So, I think he knows Detroit, and he obviously is a huge football guy. Everything that happens means a lot to him. I think he is the perfect leader. One thing too is I think the run game for them has been really good. It's kind of 2 backs, but you get I believe it's Montgomery, and then you got I'm forgetting his name now. Jahmyr Gibbs, the young buck. So both of them have just been really good. They kind of, I think Montgomery had more carries last week, but Gibbs had a little bit less, but they both had around the same yards, and they're both in the backfield. They can do so much together, and I think that's really big in terms of you just look around the league. I don't know that there's a duo in the backfield like them. I think the Jets have been less successful, but I think that Breece Hall and Braylon Allen backfield is kind of dangerous, and that's kind of one of the only ones that I can kind of think of that kind of stack up to it. But they've just not been as good, and they've had other issues. But the Lions have been good. The running game's been good. Jared Goff's been good. Their defense has been good despite losing Hutchinson. And they just added Zadarius Smith, so that's interesting for him. We'll see how that. I know he might not be able to measure up to Hutchinson, but we'll see how that pays off for him. But Detroit overall, I think, is just a really, really solid ball club that I think is going to make a big run in the NFL playoffs.
Now, you say they're the best team in the NFC, and I think we can go as far to say that, but I think we can even go farther and say they're the best team in the NFL. I mean, record, obviously they don't have the better record than the Chiefs, but if you look at quarterback play, Patrick Mahomes has not been playing to an MVP level like he usually does. His MVP standard is gone right now. He doesn't have it. Jared Goff has been playing better football than Patrick Mahomes. The offense the Lions have created, I mean, the trick plays they've been pulling out the bag, just the personnel. They have so much variation in personnel that it makes their offensive playbook this wide compared to the Chiefs' offensive playbook. I mean, the Chiefs have had a different wide receiver every week, it feels like. So the personnel changes. You have to change your offensive plays. You can't run what you're used to because your personnel constantly changes. When you have as wide of an offensive playbook and variation in your personnel as the Detroit Lions, you can do so much more. The Lions are the best team in the NFL, and I think we can confidently say that based on what we've seen. The record's obviously not there as Chiefs, but hey, when playoffs come, postseason comes, baby, nobody's worried about record. Nobody's worried about regular season record. They're worried about playing for a championship. And I think the Lions might have the best chance out of any team to play for a championship this year based on what we've seen.
I think you're probably right. I do. Like you mentioned, Chiefs have had a little bit of issues just with, we can say Mahomes has struggled a little bit, but dadgummit, it's Patrick Mahomes. By the end of his career, he'll end up maybe being the best quarterback to ever play the game. He's arguably already in the top 10, if not top five, all time. I, he's just, I think he'll find his way. They've tried to help him out, and find a number one receiver. Um, with that and DeAndre Hopkins, and he's a guy, that just hadn't been able to find it as of late. He was dominant, obviously. We all know he was dominant when he started in college. He was dominant at Clemson. He was dominant with Deshaun Watson and the Texans when they were really good a couple of years ago. So, you know, I think he still has a lot of potential. He's a great wide receiver, you know, but I can agree with you. The Lions have just been they just look like they're the best team in the league. I agree with you. Even though, like you said, they do have a loss compared to KC, who is undefeated. I just think if they both played today, I feel like the Lions would come out victorious. I really do. So, it sometimes it feels like KC makes a little bit, just some mistakes, and I feel like the Lions just play really good mistake-free football most of the time. So, I don't know if they would be able if KC would still be able to find a way to win by making those mistakes when they play the Lions.
Because if we look at it, Patrick Mahomes is leading the league in interceptions. I mean, he's tied for it. There's a bunch of other quarterbacks that had the same. As of last week, I don't know after this game, he might not be, but before last week, he was leading it with 9, who was tied with a couple other quarterbacks. And it shows just how much of a dynasty Kansas City really has. When you look at how much their defense has kept them in games, it's crazy because like their quarterback play has not been there. And we look at Patrick Mahomes, we're like, oh well, Patrick Mahomes should be this, he should be that. He's an MVP. He's thrown for 5,000 yards twice. Tom Brady's only done that one time, 2 times in his career. He's already tied Tom Brady with the most 5,000 yard seasons. 2. I mean, not more than Drew Brees, but
Hmm.
he's
Hmm.
played a third, a fourth of the time Tom Brady has. So I mean, you could say he might be the greatest by his career said and done. Uh, but I kind of want to, speaking on quarterbacks, obviously Patrick Mahomes is playing a little subpar football. I kind of want to touch on where each quarterback stands in number one, number one category. And I'll tell you what, each quarterback has a different kind of trophy. So each record or number one, whichever their quarterback is, there's a different one for each one, which is crazy. I mean, you said it earlier when we were talking about there's a lot of parity in the NFL when it comes to quarterbacks right now.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you look at it, we talked about Jared Goff earlier. He's number one in completion percentage with just shy of 75%. He's got 74.9, which is crazy.
That's an
If
insane
he ends
mark.
the season with 75% completion percentage, that's the best ever. That's the best
Yeah, that's
ever.
an insane mark.
Because I
Insane.
think Drew has it for 74.6 or something,
Hmm.
something around that mark. It's 74 point something. If Jared Goff ends it with 75, he's good. And Detroit, just all the years of suffering they've had to have a savior like Jared Goff, he wasn't even wanted by the Rams. Obviously, I don't want to talk about Jared Goff on the Rams; it'll upset me. But
Yeah.
I like Jared Goff on the Detroit Lions.
Here's my thing with that. I know you want to talk about the stats too, so I'll keep it short. But I mean, if he does get around that completion percentage mark and they do succeed and they do find themselves in the playoffs and they only lose maybe 3 games or so, there is no reason uh, that he shouldn't be the MVP. The way he's played, he is 100% should be the MVP of the league.
And I don't disagree, but we also have somebody that's playing really good football. QBR, number one in QBR and pass rating, Lamar Jackson. He's played the best football of his career. He's already, if you look at the timeline between the first 9 weeks of his 2 MVP seasons, he's already blown those stats out the water. So you're looking at it, you're like, okay, if Lamar Jackson can win MVP with these stats, why can't he win MVP with these stats up here? So we get into kind of a difficult situation. We look at the most touchdowns in the NFL passing wise. That's Baker Mayfield. The longest pass, Sam Darnold, which was week 1 versus Giants, 97 yards. And you got the most passing yards, Geno Smith. So each quarterback kind of has their own thing. We cannot sit here and confidently say there's a number one best quarterback in the league right now because each one's different. Each one's different. I mean, people would say, hey, Josh Allen's MVP guy right now. He ain't
Yeah,
number one in
we
any
hadn't
and
even
he ain't
mentioned
even
him,
we
but
hadn't
yeah,
even mentioned him, but he's not number one in any category. But like we said the
but
Bills
the
were
way
gonna
they
have an
played,
off year. They
hmm
haven't because
the
of
way they
Josh
played,
Allen. The way
hmm
Josh Allen has held his head up, the way he's been able to conduct his offense throughout the games, it's been phenomenal. It's been great to watch. The leadership Josh Allen has been able to exhibit in Buffalo has been something to watch. And you look
hmm
at him and you're like, okay, people were saying the Dolphins were going to be number one in that division. I was thinking it was the Bills all the time because you lose somebody like Stephon Diggs in Buffalo, but you keep somebody like Josh Allen, and all they did was what, get Amari Cooper before the trade deadline a couple weeks back, and it was like they were right back to business.
yeah, and even with Cooper, Shakir has still been good. You know,
Yeah, and you get
Shakir's still been
Keon
good.
Coleman to kind
As a
of.
wide, yeah, yeah. So that wide receiver room's good. Even as a wide receiver too, he still puts up numbers Shakir does. So yeah, the Bills have been good. Like you said at the beginning of the season, you kind of thought the Dolphins, a lot of unprecedented stuff has happened with them. But I mean, that's I guess it is what it is. But the Jets were in that conversation at the beginning of the year, and they've just fallen into a million pieces. So yeah, the Bills. I mean, definitely going to win that division, but definitely a juggernaut in the AFC, along with I think the Chiefs and the Ravens, which it always seems like it's those three at the end of the year.
It'll be interesting to see what each team does come postseason play because the Bills and Chiefs, there ain't a rivalry like no other come postseason. Bills and Chiefs.
Hmm.
I'm interested
Yeah.
to see what happens there. Obviously, the Chiefs have won every matchup versus Josh Allen in the postseason, so we're gonna see what happens there. Uh, but I kind of want to talk about trade deadline. I'm gonna say that I'm gonna switch it up on you. I know we talked about doing the Saints this segment. We'll wait till next segment. Let's talk about trade deadline real quick while we're on topic about these Super Bowl contending teams because each team obviously they have their roster, they have their personnel, but there's something just missing. There's that little piece that's missing. They trade right before the trade deadline, maybe get someone for cheap, someone that's in rebuild mode like the Saints or the Browns. We talked about Zadarius Smith. I kind of want to go through each of the trades, give you the stats on them, and let's talk about where these people or these teams have in terms of a playoff run. Do we see them going deep in the playoffs? Do we see them contending for a championship? So the first team I want to talk about are the Washington Commanders. And ever since Jaden Daniels came out of college, I've been big on him. And on the
Hmm.
breakdown, he was my Heisman pick before the college season started last year. On the breakdown, he was my best quarterback in the draft class. And you should have seen the harassment I got for making that stance. Everybody was like, Caleb Williams is, Caleb Williams out. Well, let me tell you something. The Washington Commanders have not been 7-2 to start 7-2 since the 80s. It's been a long dang time. And guess who did that? Jaden freaking Daniels. You draft somebody like Jaden Daniels who knows how to play ball, who's the best quarterback in his dang draft class, like I said 20 times on this show, and you have a 7-2 start. The Bears don't have that with Caleb Williams. We were thinking Caleb Williams was going into the best number one overall draft pick situation in NFL history, and it just don't seems like something's not there yet. So the Bears still have a little bit to build on. Marshawn Lattimore gets sent to the Commanders. The Commanders secondary is really young right now. You got St. Juice, who's a second year. You got Forbes, who's a second year. Jay St. Juice might be third year. I can't remember. But then you have Sanders still from Michigan, who's a rookie. I mean, you have such a young secondary, so you get somebody who knows how to play secondary, who's been there for a minute. Why not Marshawn Lattimore? Let's get 28-year-old, four-time Pro Bowl cornerback Marshawn Lattimore from the Saints. Saints are in rebuild mode, and let's see what happens. So Marshawn Lattimore in a fifth gets sent to Washington, and the Saints get a third, fourth, and sixth round pick in return. They're 7-2, Ty. They're trying to compete for a championship. This is when you go all in. You have a quarterback who's on a rookie deal. You got 4 years of him. That's all you get is 4 years on a rookie deal. You got to take advantage of that. So right now, the Commanders in year one of this rookie deal are taking advantage of it. Do we see the Commanders making a deep playoff run? What are the chances they go compete for a championship?
I think they definitely could compete for a championship. I at least in the NFC. Now, I don't know too much if they would make it to the Super Bowl. Don't know about that yet. They are, they're a little. It's just it's new. It's new. Dan Quinn, just I can't say enough about that dude. I mean, he's done a great job there. A great, great, great job there. And you mentioned it, Jaden Daniels is an electric factory. I mean, I kind of thought Caleb could be, a little scary coming out. And I wasn't too confident in really anybody. I would say, though, I think Caleb was a bona fide best quarterback, though. And I was wrong. As of right now, I think Jaden Daniels has been that number one. He's been huge for them. Uh, like we talk about the trade, Marshawn Lattimore. You add a vet who has been one of the best corners since he's been drafted to that young secondary, and I think that secondary is just going to get better. That secondary does have a lot of I think a lot of potential, and Lattimore with the Saints, you didn't see a lot of them when the Saints played. You know why? Because people don't throw his way. That's exactly why. Except when it's the Bucks, because that Mike Evans Marshawn Lattimore rivalry is always fun. I'm going to miss that, but you know I think that defense is going to get a notch better for sure. That defensive line, the interior of it is already pretty daggum good. Um, so it'll be interesting to see what they do, especially with what seems like a little bit weaker of an NFC East. Dallas is off this year. And Dak's going to be out for a while, so they're not going to be too good. Giants are just terrible right now. It's just they're not a very good organization right now. Only team that they'll have to compete with in that division is the Eagles, and maybe you could say they've taken a step back, but they have played some pretty good football.
Now, we talked about the Lions. Zadarius Smith gets sent to the Lions with the 7th, the 2026 7th. And the Browns get a 5th and 6th for this year's draft coming up. But I don't want to talk about the Lions. We've talked about them enough. I want to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers because this is a team we were thinking was going to have almost a little bit of a down year. Now, you have a team that single-handedly just about second to last or worst offense in the league last year. Single-handedly, their defense took them to the playoffs. We can say that. Just about single-handedly, their defense took them to the playoffs.
Right. You're right.
So this year, they spent $4.5 million on two quarterbacks, a veteran Russell Wilson and a little bit of a job with Justin Fields, a guy that they think they can kind of tune up. You buy a little car for $500 and make it your own. That's what their project, a little project car type deal with Justin Fields. So let's talk about what the Steelers are doing because Mike Tomlin, as far as I'm concerned, he's in the running for Coach of the Year. The stuff he's been able to do in Pittsburgh is crazy. He's playing Moneyball, Ty, and it's working. Mm-hmm. So why not? Let's add a couple more people for a little less change. Preston Smith, outside linebacker for the Packers. He gets sent to Pittsburgh for just a 7 straight up. They get a little bit of veteran. Now you have TJ Watt already there, but you have somebody like Preston Smith they want to put on the other side of TJ Watt to get double the pressure. I mean, well, 2's better than 1, right? So let's just up the ante. Let's get more pressure on there. But offensively, they're riding with Russell Wilson. They get a wide receiver like Mike Williams, a veteran. You got George Pickens. He's a young buck, still pretty young. So you get a veteran guy like Mike Williams. He's been in the league for a minute. He gets traded for a 5th. Straight up, they send the 5th to New York, and Steelers get Mike Williams. So I want to talk about their chances. Do they see? I personally, right now, they're number 1. I think they're number 1 in their division. I think they're over the Ravens. I could be wrong. They're either over the Ravens.
It's close for sure.
It's either
they're neck and neck.
Like they're neck and neck. It's either over number 1 or they're neck and neck. But let's talk about their chances of going to the playoffs. make it maybe competing for a championship, and then we'll go into a little bit of your favorite topic.
Steelers, yeah. You talked about Mike Tomlin. Definitely could be coach of the year along, and I think there's some other candidates there, Dan Campbell, obviously Dan Quinn. Um, the thing with them is, like I said, Tomlin, he is always going to find a way to. I don't think he's ever been under 500 in his entire career with Pittsburgh. He's always going to find a way to at least get to 500 this year. I think they're definitely going to be, they're definitely going to meet that and exceed that. The thing with them, I think, the Mike Williams trade. You got Pickens, and it seemed like he was the only guy. Muth was also really good. Pat Fryermuth, he's also been good, but is not a wide receiver. So you want a little bit of more speed out there. I think Mike Williams is going to be big for them. It maybe takes a target off the back of Pickens for every game. So I think that and it feels like Najee has actually ran the ball a little bit better this year. I think he kind of had a down year last year, and I honestly expected him not to be as good this year. But Najee Harris I feel like, ran it fairly well for them, and I think they found something in Russell Wilson. He's played pretty good, so maybe that offense can get better, and collide with that defense, because I think if the defense by itself, even with adding Preston Smith, without having him though, that defense was already insanely good. I wanted to talk about Beanie Bishop, who is, I believe, a rookie. Oh, he's had some really good football that he's been playing. Can't say enough about him, but that defense is always good in Pittsburgh, even with adding Preston Smith, like you said, a veteran presence. That bodes well for them. I think they'll be really good. They're going to fight with Baltimore, and and in their division. There's a couple of wild card teams, across the league. I don't think there's one in the East, but you could see the Chargers maybe. There's a couple of teams that they could fight for with a wild card spot in the AFC if they have to play wild card. If they play just division winner, I think they could win the division definitely, because if there's anybody in the league I honestly believe in as a head coach, it's Mike Tomlin.
Now, I think we can say if both sides of the ball play at a high level of football, if they both play at a high level, and they're on par with each other, if that offense gets on par with that defense, they could be a dangerous team. And we might see Pittsburgh compete for a championship since we were in diapers.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Was it 2011 was their Super Bowl? It was right after the Saints.
Was it after
45.
the Saints? Yeah,
Super Bowl 45.
We weren't.
It was played in 11. It was the 10 season. So
it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while.